Venturize has also been fortunate to have the support of various sponsor partners, including SIDBI. SIDBI has, of course, been at the forefront of making sure that the MSME sector is funded well enough, and the startup sector now is funded well enough to be able to generate jobs, to grow the economy, and to make sure that our dream of being a 5 trillion economy is realized. We are very delighted to have the Deputy Managing Director of SIDBI, Shri Sudatta Mandal, to join us, coming in all the way from Mumbai, or Delhi, I suppose. Mumbai. We're very glad to have you here with us, Mr. Mandal. He's no stranger to the world of finance, spent almost 25 years in this space before he took charge as the DMD of SIDBI. Very interesting background, an electrical engineer from IIT Kanpur, I read, and an MBA from IIM Lucknow. Yes. And I am Kolkata. And so we would love to have you share your opening thoughts and comments to our startups and entrepreneurs here before we take up the panel on Agritech and sustainability. Can I invite you to the stage, sir? With a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here with us. And we look forward to, so the structure that we have is we will have opening comments by Mr. Mandal. And then we will have the panel joining in for the conversation on Agritech and sustainability as well. So can I request you to take the stage? Can I get you a glass of water?
It's time to remove my mask. I was told that COVID protocol is being followed very strictly here. So, anyway, good afternoon, everybody. I understand the Honorable Minister will take some time to reach here. Nevertheless, I'll begin. Shri B.C. Patil is not here today. As of now, he'll be joining us shortly. So, the esteemed panel members, dignitaries on and off the dais. Thank you. Representatives from the VC and startup ecosystem, our young startup founders, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and honor to be part of Venturize, the Global Startup Challenge being organized as part of Invest Karnataka. This event is quite timely and unique, not only in terms of its format, which facilitates connect between startups and investors, but also because of its focus on startups working in the critical areas of manufacturing and sustainability. An equal pleasure, of course, is participating in the event in the physical format after a long hiatus because of COVID-related restrictions, and being part of this august and very vibrant gathering. I thank the organizers for this opportunity. Though the panel is on Agritech and sustainability, my brief has been to speak on the startups in general, perhaps also because SIDBI as an institution is sector agnostic. We cater to each and every sector in the economy, wherever there are SMEs present, wherever there are startups present. So to begin with, I would like to briefly recount a few recent events and key highlights of the startup ecosystem as we stand today. As you would all know, India has emerged as the third largest ecosystem for startups globally, with over 77,000 DPIIT recognized startups across 656 districts of the country as of August 29, 2022. The Indian startup ecosystem has seen exponential growth in the past few years, with 15 times increase in the total funding for startups, 9 times increase in the number of investors, and 7 times increase in the number of incubators. Till financial year 2017, approximately 1 unicorn was being added every year. Over the past 4 years, this number has been increasing exponentially with a whopping 66% year-on-year growth in the number of unicorns being added every year. As of September 7, 2022, and I need to be mindful of the date because every second day a new unicorn is announced. So this is the statistic as on 7th of September 2022. India is home to 107 unicorns with a total valuation of 341 billion. out of which 44 startups became unicorns with total valuation of 93 billion in 2021, and 21 startups with total valuation of 27 billion US dollars became unicorns in 2022. So that speaks a lot for the startup ecosystem in India as we stand today. Geographically, the center of India's high-tech industry, Namma Bengaluru, is India's unicorn capital with the largest number of unicorns headquartered here, followed by Delhi NCR and then Mumbai. While unicorns are active in tier 1 cities, the startup ecosystem is not restricted there and has proliferated across the country. As per the Global Innovation Index 2022 report, India has moved up to the 40th rank, up 41 places in 7 years. India is ranked first in innovation among the lower middle income economies and also in innovation in Central and Southern Asia. India continues to lead the world in the ICT services export indicator and holds top rankings in other indicators as well. Karnataka has been driving and leading the VC and startup ecosystem of the country in case of SIDBI as well. Our efforts have borne fruit due to the enterprise and skills of fund managers as well as the entrepreneurs of Karnataka. At this encouraging juncture where we are poised today, it would be appropriate to look at the steps or the gaps to be addressed and the further milestones which can be crossed going forward. Firstly, I'll be talking about the early age funding of startups. In fact, one of the questions from the audience to the previous panel was how to attract funding for early age startups who have not yet been able to declare a net positive revenue stream. Right? So that is one of the key challenges for the Indian startups during the initial stages, is that of securing early stage investments to support their ideas and vision. At this time, most startups are too nascent for organized investment flow from VC funds and look up to early believers, which are mainly high net worth individuals and family offices or angel investors for funding. So that is one of the responses given by the panel members, that as at the angel funding stage, you have to look at a different set of investors to fund you. You cannot look at the traditional VC funds because they will be focusing more on the growth stage startups. So at the early stage startup where you are looking for seed capital, it is better to look at the angel investors. And today, unfortunately, the angel ecosystem is not very vibrant in India, and it is dominated by the family offices and the HNI funds. Right? So there is a huge gap in the number of angel investors that need to make up the bulk of the emerging or early stage funding for startups. Just for your information, SIDBI through its subsidiary, which is the SIDBI Venture Capital Limited, has recently set up a few dedicated funds for supporting startups, both emerging and early stage ventures. There are 2 state-specific funds and 1 pan-India fund. As you would be aware, keeping in view SIDBI's long experience and track record, the government had nominated SIDBI to manage the fund of funds for startups, which is a fund of 10,000 crore rupees set up in 2016. The FFS emanated from the Startup India Action Plan launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in 2016. The fund has been a game changer as it has achieved 2 major objectives. It has encouraged creation of pools of domestic risk capital, which was scarce, and there was high dependency on foreign capital. And number 2, it has also helped mushrooming of new AIFs, resulting in growth of local fund management capabilities. FFS has made commitments of more than rupees 7,000 crore till date to around 90 AIFs across the country, including tier 2 and tier 3 cities and towns. Now, since the panel following my address is going to be on the Agritech and sustainability, I have some specific numbers for the Agritech sector. So 25 out of these 90 AIFs have been in the Agritech sector, which is part of their investment thesis. And they have so far invested 636 crore in 23 Agritech startups. In case of any of the startups present here require equity or venture debt from the AIF supported by SIDBI under the fund of funds, we will be happy to facilitate your connect with the fund managers who have been supported under the FFS scheme by SIDBI. The second point is about the venture debt for startups. The need to have specially tailored debt products suited to enterprises where innovation is the underlying strength is recognized by SIDBI. SIDBI has in the past introduced schemes under its risk capital umbrella for early stage risk as part of its developmental role. which had peaked before the startup equity funding ecosystem actually took off in India. So we have been one of the first movers in the startup funding space, both in terms of venture debt and venture capital. Although the results have been mixed, but there were quite a few several success stories as well. SIDBI has also made commitments to venture debt AIFs under the FFS, which provide debt support to the venture capital funded companies. SIDBI was a key catalyzing investor in the maiden funds of today's leading venture debt funds focused on startups. SIDBI has launched a new initiative where SIDBI would be offering venture debt to such companies where VC funds have made equity investments. This would be on partnership or referral basis with various VC funds, recognizing the importance of venture debt in addition to venture capital, because I understand many of the young the founders here of startups are not very keen on relinquishing their capital or their stake in their companies, and often look for venture debt instead of venture capital. And there is a growing market for venture debt in India today. To facilitate flow of such venture debt into the startup ecosystem, SIDBI has created a separate business vertical which will look exclusively at venture debt, and this will be done, as I mentioned, in partnership with the VC funds who have given equity investment in the investee companies. And there is also an Ubharte Satare program of SIDBI and Exim Bank, which looks at providing debt and quasi-equity to companies with a unique value proposition having good export potential, which would also include startups, albeit at the growth stage. This is besides equity investments under the Ubharte Satare fund being managed by SVCL, where SIDBI and Exim Bank are the anchor investors, and other commercial bankers have also contributed to that fund. The first close has been announced for that fund, and we are looking for subsequent contributions, but in the meantime, around 3 investment deals have already been sanctioned. You would also be aware of the recent credit guarantee scheme for startups, which has been announced by the Government of India. As you would know, startups face challenges in raising debt through the formal banking channels due to non-availability of collateral security or tangible security. The Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, that is DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, has recently approved the credit guarantee scheme for startups for providing credit guarantee for loans up to a maximum of rupees 10 crore. Loans extended by member lending institutions, including the scheduled commercial banks, financial institutions, NBFCs, as also SEBI-registered AIFs, will be covered under the guarantee scheme. This scheme will be run by NCGTC and is expected to be a game changer and an important enabler for the startups which require debt from the institutional sources. While venture debt option was available earlier also, the guarantee scheme as an effective risk mitigation measure may encourage the venture debt AIFs to look at funding companies which are at the earlier stage of their growth process. The startups should therefore actively evaluate their readiness for availing debt finance and opt for benefiting from this guarantee scheme. I'm happy to share that SIDBI is the first institution to register as a member lending institution with NCGTC under the credit guarantee scheme. We already have a few venture debt proposals which are under active consideration in the pipeline, and we hope to be the first institution to again seek guarantee coverage for specific proposals under this scheme. Moving now to a few of the specific discussion points. The startups are going to be the key engines driving us towards India at 2047 and in helping the country becoming Atmanirbhar, which is the goal of the Government of India. Sustainability and technology are fields requiring disruption, and such disruption and innovations are the forte of the startups. Coming to collaboration with larger corporates, with the focus on digitization as well as nimbleness, innovation in business strategies, there is a lot of traction in collaborations between the startups and the corporates. Through such collaborations, while the startups stand to benefit from corporate resources, access to customer base and data, the larger corporates are able to adopt innovation and disruption, have access to new technology or test new technology, and stay abreast of the competition. Another benefit for the startups is the increasing availability of corporate funding to the startups in terms of these collaborations. In the banking sector or the financial sector itself, pursuant to digitization, there are increasing number of examples of such collaborations taking place or which are being explored very actively. At the same time, corporates and startups are intrinsically quite different in the way they operate. Their risk appetites are different, their overall organizational cultures are different, And therefore, it will take efforts and commitments on the part of both the corporates and the startups to make such collaborations work. Coming to the collaboration or engagement with the government, there is unprecedented focus of and encouragement from the side of the government for startups today. This covers funding, ease of doing business, and market connects and business opportunities. Besides exemptions in the procurement process while bidding for tenders, different ministries of the Government of India, including Defense, Telecommunications, IT, Department of Science and Technology, etc., are providing seed funding and actively looking at startups for solutions, products, or contracts in their respective fields. So I hope that the startups sitting here in this room are aware of the various seed funds set up by the various departments and ministries of the Government of India. If you do not have that information, you can easily contact SIDBI. We will be able to provide that information to you. If the startups are therefore able to deliver to their expectations, engagement with government will be one of the key business drivers for the future. On the future for startups at the intersection of sustainability and technology innovations, entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and climate change offers large number of problems requiring fast solutions. Every one of these issues could turn into a thriving business model and at the same time save lives and livelihoods. Consumer demand for sustainable processes and business practices has grown over the years. The regulators are also increasingly taking action on net zero. Business opportunity around sustainability with use of technology as a problem solver is thus very clear, and startups working in this area have great potential. Climate tech itself is offering many opportunities. Startup founders across the globe have begun turning their attention towards the huge challenges of decarbonizing our economies, with recent years seeing palpable growth in the number of founders and investors looking to tackle the fundamental problem of climate change. Besides the above, startups and related opportunities in alternate energy, alternate materials are to watch out for. There is also a potential for the not-for-profit startups working in collaboration with developmental or impact-oriented agencies in smaller pockets to bring about changes and test new approaches. I hope all of you would be aware that the government is also in the process of setting up a social stock exchange where this kind of CSR funding will get attracted and the impact funding in the Indian ecosystem will get a huge impetus through the social stock exchange. To conclude, SIDBI looks at startups as India of tomorrow. The stage is set for the startups to work towards the goals of India at 2047, help solve India's strategic problems and make India self-reliant. Manufacturing and sustainability-focused startups have a special role to play towards this end, with significant efforts and support from different stakeholders converging towards startups. We look forward to these enterprises in India building products and solutions for the world. I hope we have a very productive round of discussions in the last panel of the event, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for painting a very broad landscape of the work that's happening and the various schemes of SIDBI. I think this conversation is just the beginning of a variety of partnerships that we must drive between the startup ecosystem and SIDBI, which anyway is very active here. With that, we are running about 25 minutes behind schedule, but as we've said, we've saved the best for the last, in a way. We've got a wonderful panel coming up on Agritech and sustainability. I've requested Sri Mandal to join in into that conversation as well. Without further ado, let me call our moderator, Rahul Gouraha, VP New Business ITC Limited, and also the session sponsor and partner, to come up on the dais to help us navigate through this conversation. I also invite Reihem Roy, partner, Omnivore, Sandeep, Kondaji, founder and CEO of KrishiTantra, Abhay, Pareek, lead agriculture, World Economic Forum. I think we've got a phenomenal perspective, a variety of perspectives on this panel, a leading financier, an investor, a large corporate, an entrepreneur, and a policy perspective. So, Rahul, over to you to get us on this journey.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many of you in person now. And without much ado, I'll get to introducing this panel very quickly. We have with us Reihem from Omnivore. And I think anybody in this space of Agritech knows this name of Omnivore. They have been investors for almost the who's who of all Agritechs in India. We have Sandeep with us. He is the founder and CEO of KrishiTantra. This is a startup in the Agritech space, more specifically in soil testing. And this has been an important focus area right from everybody in government downwards from Mr. Modi himself. We also have Abhay Pareek. He's lead Agri World Economic Forum, and he will share his perspective on solving ecosystem related challenges. And we also have in this panel Mr. Mandal, who's just spoken to us. My name is Rahul Gouraha. I head the ITC Mars vertical within ITC. Just to give you guys a very quick introduction of what ITC Mars is. It's part of the ITC's agribusiness division. This business is into sourcing of agri commodities. It's one of the biggest private players in this space, roughly $2 billion in turnover annually, just to give a sense of scale, present across many value chains. And the basic business purpose is to connect the farmers to both domestic and international markets. And right now we are in the process of pivoting this business into a full stack Agritech platform, which is ITC Mars. On this platform, ITC Mars, the farmers can essentially get tech-enabled personalized advisory. And basis this advisory, the farmers can purchase various agri inputs on the ITC Mars platform. For purchasing these inputs, they also get enabled via credit through banks. And finally, they can also sell their produce, which is the harvest on the ITC Mars platform. This platform, whilst there is a mobile layer to it, it's a phygital platform, I would say. There's also a physical layer that we have built on top of this mobile platform, starting with a huge ecosystem of FPOs, which are the last mile or the first mile node at a village level, and then complemented by a large ITC team. So we are physically present and digitally present through this ITC Mars platform. This also allows us to create an ecosystem for a lot of agri-tech startups, because many of them have great point solutions, like the one we will talk about today, which is a soil testing. But many times taking these innovations village after village in India and being able to monetize it is very expensive, very time consuming. So many of them are able to plug and scale in this platform of ITC Mars. So this is a very quick introduction of what ITC Mars is. Moving on to my first panelist, to my left, Reihem. You've been part of Omnivore almost 10 years now, so you've really seen the journey. So would be great to kind of get your perspective on how you have seen the sector evolving over the last 10 years, and what would be your take on some of the trends you see now going ahead short term and also somewhat long term?
Hi, thank you very much. So as he mentioned, I'm Reihem Roy. I'm one of the partners at Omnivore. Omnivore is a venture capital fund that focuses exclusively on the agri-tech space. We've been around for a little over a decade now. We manage about 1,000 crores, which we are in the process of investing into right now 40 and counting companies across two funds, largely representing the interests of investors, including SIDBI and other domestic and international investors who have prioritized agri-tech as a space. It's interesting that question that you asked, because I think if I look back at what we were looking at in 2012 and what we're looking at in 2022, I'm unable to recognize what the sector was then and what it is today. 2012 was, I think, a very, very nascent stage for agri-tech in India. Entrepreneurs were coming into the space, were either looking to build SMEs, which is perfectly admirable and good, but not necessarily the best use of venture capital. Also, what we were seeing were entrepreneurs that were entering it out of backgrounds in the corporate ecosystem. And therefore, a lot of what we take for granted today in the startup ecosystem, that understanding of growth, that understanding of challenges, navigating early stage growth, navigating early stage fundraising, was not really there. I think what was really missing was, of course, funding in the ecosystem. I think if there was enough funding back then, we would have seen a lot more entrepreneurial activity. But the truth is that it was a very lonely time. We used to, I think we made 13 investments, of which 11 are active today out of our first fund back then. And I think it took maybe 36 months sometimes for companies to go out and raise follow-on investments and really be able to fund their growth. That number is down to 3 or 6 months in 2022, which I think speaks for itself. We were a bit of a odd ball or a ugly duckling, whatever you want to call it, because I don't think there were many people that were looking at this space. Agritech space it wasn't really a buzzword that people were using. Today, I'm very happy to say that competitors are everywhere. I think competitors is the wrong word. Collaborators are everywhere, whether it's a Sequoia, whether it's an Axel, whether it's every fund that most of the startup ecosystem is now very familiar with. These funds are now taking bets in this space and consider it mainstream. And perhaps the greatest achievement of this whole Agritech movement is that now Agritech is mainstream. We have seen some incredible entrepreneurs over the course of the last few days, but I think we're reaching a stage right now where we will have the first Agritech unicorn in the next quarter or two. And I think that's going to send a strong signal to entrepreneurs that this is a space that requires their attention and requires their ingenuity in order to effectively scale up what employs half our country and runs and drives a significant percentage of our GDP. And end of the day, we all need to eat. And we rely on a network of about 100 million farmers that are keeping us alive. And we need to build products and services and platforms and enable this network of growers, farmers, facilitators and traders to sort of support India in its next phase of growth.
Great. Thanks a lot, Reihem. I think it was fascinating, just going through that journey that you recounted to us. And as they say, there's nothing more powerful than the idea whose time has come. I think Agritech sounds like one, certainly. And you touched upon an important piece that there are no competitors in this space right now, because the space is so large that everybody who's entering in is only expanding the market, building it. So there are actually only collaborators right now in this space. So great, thanks for that perspective, and we'll come back to you, Reihem. Moving on to Sandeep, you've been an entrepreneur, you've been an innovator. So talk us a little bit about how your journey has been, and what are some of the challenges you face today?
Yeah. Hello everyone. First of all, it's a privilege to be sharing the dais with everyone who are familiar and who are part of our journey actually. So Omnivore being our investor, and SIDBI through NABARD also invested, and ITC Mars also is our customer, and we are also working part of Sagu Bagu, which is an initiative of World Economic Forum. So it's a great privilege, and I feel that this privilege is for the startups, and it's an Amrit Kal, I would say. As an entrepreneur, I really feel that this is a golden era for the startups because the ecosystem is so much conducive right now for a startup to think something crazy and make it a reality, right? So there are no limitations as such, whether in terms of financial availability, if the idea is right, and if the idea has a potential to scale, then for scaling there is enough fund that is also there. I think it's all about getting things right. I think as an entrepreneur, the only challenge that we had to get to a stage where to deal with so much of abundance, the opportunity that is available. Like all of a sudden you have things so much in front of you. Now, how to operationalize yourself and bring in, the financial discipline in making the best use of it, and create a product. Creating a product is something, creating a trust in everyone's mind, right? And creating a credibility of a solution. That is the very most, I think, as a challenge, at least for a soil testing business, because this is something which was being handled only by government institutions, like you have KVKs, you have government laboratories. But now we had to take this solution to the field, from lab to the field, right? So now the credibility, again, it's been owned by the institution, so we had to cross that barrier, which took us some of the time, and we were very much fortunate to have backers like Omnivore and NABARD's NAB Ventures, and also I would say customers also looking at us, giving us that initial opportunity like ITC Mars. Now ITC Mars is something which we are also very proud of, that apps like ITC Mars is having soil testing and a fertilizer recommendation that is going from KrishiTantra, and World Economic Forum also looking that as a most fundamental aspect of data-driven agriculture, and where they are looking at that as an initial entry point. So we have those things. Now it's only about how to go to the next level, and of course, as challenges will be there and it will continue to exist. We as an entrepreneurs and we'll have to just look at the ways how to mitigate those and go to the next stage.
Sandeep, I mean, if I could request you, maybe for the interest of the participants here, just in a few minutes explain what the startup is about, because not everybody understands what is soil testing, what is the problem you're solving. It will be helpful, it will give some context to everybody.
Yeah, so KrishiTantra, we are a Agritech startup. So we are a soil technology platform. So our entire objective as an organization, we wanted to take an affordable and accessible, to make technology accessible to the farmers. And soil is that initial, the fundamental aspect where everything goes in. So farmers today, they put the seed inside the soil and they put in your fertilizers, everything in the soil. But over a period of time, this has been exploited in a way where, it has become unscientific. So you have fertilizers that were going in abundance. So instead of putting 5 bags of urea, they have started putting 10 bags of urea. So it was like rampage. It was like broadcasting whatever was available, and it was exploitation of not only the soil, but also the limited available resource, that is urea, or you take DAP, which is heavily also subsidized by government. So government also today spends about 1.5 crore on the subsidy alone for urea. So now, which is damaging the environment, which is also damaging economically to the farmer. So that is the problem statement that we thought that we have to, if we have to solve this, then we need a technology enablement. We need that information. We need the ground information that what is existing today in the soil. So that is where we developed a platform, a technology platform, which is a rapid, soil testing solution, and backed with an IoT. So we developed a cloud platform where soil testing of all the macro and micro elements that are available in the soil is analyzed in less than 30 minutes. At par with any of the research institutions are using today, like atomic absorption spectrophotometer. So what we did is we brought in the innovation to reduce the time and keeping the accuracy at the same levels, and make it accessible to all the further value chain. So on that note, so we are working with enterprises, we are working with governments, we are working with, in fact, State Government of Karnataka is one of our customer who is also scaling our solution. So we have 150 mobile soil vans, which is a part of Krishi Sanjeevani, which was recently launched by our Honorable Chief Minister and also our Honorable Agriculture Minister, Shri B.C. Patil. So this is also integrated to the fruits platform. So now everywhere that soil is the soil parameter that is required to decide what input should go and how it should be used, in what, in what phases that has to be used. So that is exactly what we are developing and making this data set, a data repository at scale. So currently we are operating in over 7 states, and now we are also working with the initiative of Soil Health Card, which is a central government initiative. where now, some time back, I think in the last panel discussion, people were talking about super app. It's the first time I heard that thing. But Government of India, we are launching a super app, would say that, where it is one nation, one soil testing app. So we have made that enablement. So now 150 million farmers' soil health will be visible, and that is something that KrishiTantra will be managing and also taking it to the next level.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Sounds wonderful. Moving on, Abhay, you work on a lot of ecosystem related challenges. So, just talk a little bit more about, specifics, what do you work on? And many times this almost sounds like boiling the ocean. So, would be great also if you could talk through one or two successes that you have seen.
Sure. So, hi everyone. Just to give you a brief on what World Economic Forum and why it's here in India. World Economic Forum is a not-for-profit based in Geneva. The mandate that World Economic Forum works on is to create public-private partnerships to address some of the global challenges. So when Honorable Prime Minister was there in Davos in 2018, he encouraged World Economic Forum to open a Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution here in India. We're based in Mumbai. Our mandate is to work on how 4IR technologies or Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies, including AI, IoT, blockchain, and drones, can scale in real economy sectors, including agriculture, but also health, smart cities, circular economies, and others. So coming to agriculture, our focus has been again on how ecosystem challenges within Agritech space can be addressed through public-private partnerships. So where we are coming from was a detailed exercise of almost 6 to 8 months to understand what are the challenges in the ecosystem, why there's a level where agritechs cannot move beyond, and what are those challenges we should address to. And there were 3 challenges that were identified through consultations with investors. Omnivore was one of the critical parts of that in discussions. We had academia, we had professional services, we had startups as part of it, we had governments as part of our working groups. And 3 or 4 key challenges were identified. Data was one of the critical challenges that was across all the discussions that we had, that data is there for with governments or with other institutions, but it's in silos. And we don't know what the data quality is there. So that was one of the biggest challenges that we heard. The second challenge that was there was a validation of the technology solutions that are coming through. Though most of these startups are now in a stage where their solutions are validated, we still have new startups coming in every day. And there is a need that their solutions are validated or supported by domain institutions such as agriculture universities. Give them that space, that empirical evidences that give them credibility to go to market and scale their solutions. So that was one second challenges that was identified. And the third was still there's a big scope of government programs and agri-tech startups converging. We know government is pushing so many welfare programs for farmers, but still you don't see that much big pie of startups playing a big role in there. So picking up these 3 or 4 challenges, we started deliberating on how do you, again as you said, boiling the ocean and bring it all together. We created a public-private partnership framework that was adopted first by state of Telangana, and they named it Project Sagu Bagu. The idea of that public-private partnership framework is the same that I just mentioned, that government becomes an enabler of agri-tech services and create a market for agri-tech services in their states. They offer data sets, again through our agri-data exchange, that's one of the big initiatives we are trying to drive, but under the laws of the land through an agri-data management policy. So Telangana was front runner on it, and they developed an agri-data management policy around it, which was put into public consultation and maybe released soon. They are working on creating an agri-data exchange, first of its kind in India. That's again the part of the Sagu Bagu project. The second incentive that the government is now rolling out is sharing some of their resources on the ground. So time of the extension workers, the resource centers, the farmer resource centers, maybe a warehouse which is underutilized, that can be shared with startups. So most of these incentives, as you see, are non-financial, but will have an impact on the OPEX of these startups when they are going on the ground. So they've started with chili value chain, but at the same time, we are seeing this framework being adopted by other states. So we are in discussion with, so MP was another state where we did this project. It was slightly different in Madhya Pradesh. Their government opened up most of their departments to help startups come and play a big role. So for example, if a startup is coming into Madhya Pradesh, they said, okay, if you need to talk to Mandi board, we'll bring them together. If you want to talk to horticulture department, we'll bring them on the table. So let all the departments come on the table, you give your solution to us and we'll help you scale it in our state. So that was the framework that we tried to drive. Our role has been of more of a convener and coordinator. We take a back step when the governments take the projects up, and we again play a role of bringing the community together and making sure things move forward. So as I'm saying, at the same time, the Government of India is also adopting this framework, creating a framework on public-private partnership. We are supporting them on that line. So as you're saying, ecosystem challenges, I think these are the three key ecosystem challenges that needs to be addressed: data, convergence with government programs, and validity or validation of agri-tech startups. And I'll just touch upon that. What we are trying to create in our public-private partnership framework is also a sandbox for agri-techs. So we have created a concept, and again, Telangana being the forefront runner on the Sagu Bagu project is working on how a sandbox can be created in an agri-university. But having said that, I've heard great positive response from central government also, who wants to create that network of sandboxes across country, because that's a key thing that they want to focus on. So I'll stop here if you're
Great. Thanks a lot. I mean, just maybe if you could still hold on to the mic, there's a lot of talk on open data sharing and idea stack. Would you want to expand some of it?
Sure. So for us, data was the critical enabler, and that's where we started working on this idea of agri-data exchange. What we are bringing on the table is, of course, the technology on one side is, understand what are the use cases where the data sets are more critical. And what we have learned is that among all the data sets that are being talked about, there are hardly 15 to 20 critical data sets that are sort of common in all the agri-techs that we are talking about, be it soil data, be it pest infestation data, farm data. So our role has been to understand these data sets, and what we are trying to see is the two levels of data that we definitely have is personal data and the non-personal data. So let's just start with the non-personal data sets to create that confidence in the industry. While personal data sets require a larger data management policy, the privacy policies to be developed, and we are supporting government to do that. But what we are encouraging governments is to take that first step and share data in as is and where is form, at least with the startups. Let them also run through it, both get an understanding on what are the critical requirements, what are the quality requirements. And from government side, we keep hearing what is the use case, what is the final output. So for them also to learn what is the final output that's going to come through if they share that data. So create that confidence among everyone, to come on a table and take the bite of this bullet of data sharing.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Reihem, coming back to you, you maybe missed that thing when I raised it first, that there's a lot of talk of this funding winter. And so what's your take now on this specific space of Agritech? Is that also seeing the same, or it's somehow immune to it?
So I think first we need to clarify that there is no funding winter. What there is compared to the complete craziness of 2021, there's a return to normalcy. So post a very hot summer, normal temperature seems like winter, but that was not the case. I think with the investment community, of which I am a part, so I'll share some of the blame. We responded to COVID in a slightly funny way, where we decided that the way to deal with it was to invest like we've never invested before, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think valuations got completely out of control, and it was, what's the word? FOMO, fear of missing out, was the prevailing investment thesis of Indian venture capital for about 6 months. As a result, I think it turned into there were a lot of rounds that were happening maybe at a higher valuation than they should, and that resulted in a correction. And I think, let's be very clear, there has never been as much dry powder as there is in the VC ecosystem as there is today. So there's absolutely no dearth of funding. What we are seeing is the investment community taking a giant step back, approaching things with more caution, spending more time on due diligence, and ensuring that the people whose money we are managing are getting the best bang for buck and the best fiduciary responsibility from the investment community. So I don't think there's a winter at all.
Thanks for clarifying, in fact. I mentioned in the beginning that you have a huge list of companies you have invested in, Agritechs. Are there any Agritechs from Karnataka that you are excited about?
Oh, absolutely. I think without any doubt, Karnataka is one of the most important geographies for Omnivore as a fund. One of our first investments is in a dairy tech company called Stellapps. Stellapps is one of these unseen giants that is lumbering in the background, which is enabling, which essentially enables some of the largest milk cooperatives here in Karnataka. To give you a sense, it's the technology that's driving milk collection centers, it's the technology that's driving bulk milk chillers, it's the technology which each dairy farmer in Karnataka is using when they ascertain how much money is owed to them every morning. To give you a sense on numbers, right now 3.6 million farmers every day are touching a Stellapps technology product in one way or the other. So the sheer scale at which, I think it's very important for all of us to appreciate how large some of these agri problems are as an opportunity. And since I'm talking about dairy, I don't think many of us realize that dairy is 4% of India's GDP. And that 100 million stakeholders, most of whom are not from wealthy backgrounds, are associated with the dairy sector. 26% of non-urban GDP comes from just one commodity. And this is just one in a list of many commodities that India is the number one or the number two producer of. We're the number one producer of pretty much everything that you can think of, and if it's not on the list, we're the number two producer. However, we're also net even, meaning we produce and we consume. There's an opportunity to export, there's an opportunity to value add. Some of the companies that we're working with in Karnataka, I mentioned Stellapps, which is by far the largest milk technology company in the country. Resha Mandi is by far the largest, I think, what would be the technical term? Sericulture is how we see it, but other people see it as fabric tech or textile tech. Organizing Karnataka's silkworm growers, weavers, reelers, that feeds into this massive silk industry that India should be running globally, but unfortunately we're not because we've allowed China to take that step forward. So I would say Karnataka is very much at the fore of bringing silk back to India. And I can think of many more examples. There's of course Sandeep's company, KrishiTantra, which you've heard about. There are companies like Clover, which are trying to take the vast networks of greenhouses across our country and convert it into a source of food which is climate proof, because protected agriculture is the only way farmers can really adapt to a changing climate. So, I mean, I won't go through every, because like I said, there are 40 examples, but Karnataka has been core to our vision always. A vast number of our portfolio is based here. And it's been a wonderful ecosystem, very progressive farmers, so we're always glad to do business here.
Fascinating two examples, and interesting that you mentioned these two, where Karnataka actually is number one in the country. So great examples, Reihem. Moving on finally to Mr. Mandal, you talked a lot about agri funding and the work that you are doing. Are there any, in consonance with the broader theme of startups, are there any interesting interventions that you are doing which you would like to share?
Sure. Just to clarify that we don't do much of agri funding because that is done by NABARD. SIDBI is into funding the SMEs and the startups. But nevertheless, the startups in the agri sector are of interest to us. So talking about the new initiatives, some of them I mentioned during my address. But to take forward what Sandeep said, you were talking about the agricultural universities conducting sandbox or providing sandbox testing facilities to many of these agri-tech companies. You are essentially talking about an incubation center in the agri-universities, right? So SIDBI is in the process of setting up its own incubation support policy, wherein we are looking at providing assistance to the incubation centers who are nurturing these startups both by way of grant or equity or a returnable grant. So there are various models which are being looked into. We have been in the incubation space for a very long time. We have a very long association with IIT Kanpur for their incubation center. We have also assisted the incubation center in IIM Indore. Okay. But the policy which we are now framing is towards looking at these smaller academic institutions, because the likes of IITs and IIMs will have alternate sources of funding. It's the smaller, academic institutions at the local level or hyper-local level which will require assistance, because a lot of these startup ideas are actually coming from the ground in the hinterlands, and particularly in the agri-tech sector, where you have a wide range of climatic conditions, of soil conditions. The solutions will also come at the hyper-local level, right? So we are therefore looking at partnering with these incubation centers or setting up incubation centers in these smaller academic institutions to help these startups. We are going to be sector agnostic, but I'm sure the agri-tech startups will be one of the big beneficiaries of this activity. The second initiative that we are taking, where again the agri-tech startups will be benefiting, is we are in the process of setting up a climate fund, right? And as we are all aware that the direct impact of climate change first happens in the agricultural sector. So there is a lot of scope for the startups in the agri-tech sector to build or come up with technology which makes the agricultural production or agricultural activities more climate resilient. So in that space, wherever you have these climate resilient technologies coming up, they will be able to benefit from the climate fund that we are in the process of setting up. And we are also talking to many multilateral agencies because they in turn have also set up climate funds. Just 2 weeks back, I was in Abidjan. I was talking to the DFI in Italy. They have set up an Italian climate fund. In fact, they are having a session on 14th at the COP27. So they are also very keen on partnering with SIDBI in India, and they are looking at investing in the climate fund that we set up here. So we are talking to such like-minded institutions for attracting investments into that climate fund, which can then go in funding even the agri-tech startups. The third one, again, it is sector agnostic, but it is equally applicable to the agri-tech startups, is that again for the DPIIT, we are in the process of setting up an equity portal. It's going to be a matchmaking portal for the investors and the startups. So the startups can upload their pitch decks and their funding requirements on that portal, which will also have the investor community as members. They can then scan through depending on their investment thesis. They can pick up the the startups and transact with them. Of course, the transaction as of now is not going to happen on the platform. It's going to happen off the platform. But all the other related services are going to be provided by the platform, including the initial due diligence and screening of the startups. So we have engaged one of the existing companies in India who have a similar platform. We realized that instead of reinventing the wheel, we can simply white label their platform and then tweak it and customize it to the requirements, to our requirements, and then launch it in a very short span of time. So hopefully in a couple of months' time, we'll be able to launch that equity portal. So these are some of the main initiatives. There are many more, but these are the 3 key ones which I wanted to share with you.
Very interesting, honestly, and especially the one where you mentioned about the climate fund. Never been more topical than now this year, when 2 of the main crops in India, wheat and rice, both got impacted by extreme weather events. So I would like to also now take some time and look for questions from the audience which the panelists can answer.
Good afternoon all. Good afternoon all. I'm Girish Esrao, based in Bangalore, and in fact I'm a farmer. I left my IT job and been a farmer for last 3 years. Very honest. We have seen Google Experience Center. We have seen Car Showroom Experience Center. But unfortunately we have not seen Farmers Experience Center for Technology. Agree? So I am setting up the Farmers Experience Center of Technology in 85 kilometers from Bangalore on the Mysore road. See, the farmers are finding difficult to connect all the four of you who are sitting in the platform. They don't have an access. How do we access them? How do we connect farmers? Farmers cannot come to this such large enterprise boldly and talk like us. They have a fear factors. They don't know which tractor to buy. They don't know which technology to implement. They don't know how the water management affects their business. They don't know what is their future is all about. If they grow crop, they don't know what is a market value. We have all seen this in the past. But what is an exact solution? How do we address this? So for these reasons, I have taken that bold step. Last 4 years, I built a supersonic infrastructure which can digitally connect to SIDBI if required. It can digitally connect to ITC if required. It can digitally connect to the global platform so that the farmers can directly interact. Come and give the first-hand experience. So this is one thing we are building, number one. Number two, yes, if you look at the production of food will be a major challenge for 8 billion people or 9 billion people across the globe. We have to take it up very seriously. India with 1.4 billion or 1.5, we really don't have an exact data, we have more. But how do we produce this food? Today, a kg of tomato costs 40 rupees or 35 rupees. What does the farmer get? Hardly 2 rupees or 3 rupees. Ultimately, we have seen all these risk factors. Farming has become an unsustainable business, very truly. Farming is unsustainable. Today, there are so many parents here. Tell me one child want to become a farmer. Nobody will raise the hand. Trust me, nobody will raise the hand. Girish, I'll just 2 minutes. Okay? The question is that probably in a simple way, how do we connect quickly to farmers? We have seen the threats. We need funds, we need technology. If I go to the bank has got their own logistics papers to support to get that funding. If I go to the private equity, they look at the balance sheets. After the balance sheet, after the profit, money comes. Can we make it little easy so that we address the issues and concerns moving forward? Thank you. I'm sorry if I've taken a long time.
Sure. No, this was a fascinating pivot that you have done. Salute to you, sir. Would you want to take that, Reihem?
Sure, I don't think there are any easy answers, and everything that you have said definitely holds. But I think, one, to be clear, we are venture capital, not private equity. None of the companies we have invested in have ever seen profits. I wish they had. But to be clear, I think the way we are aiming, not succeeding, the way we are trying to solve this problem is by backing startups that are going after, I think, if I were to sum up in a phrase the problem that you described, it's the oldest problem in Indian agri-tech. It's information asymmetry. But the thing is that the consumer of wheat in Bangalore and the producer of wheat in Indore don't have a line of discussion. There are about 400 middlemen between them, all of whom are basically building arbitrage on top of information asymmetry. When a farmer needs to buy a tractor, using the example that you used, he is basically dependent on what is available within his geographical, let's say 10 kilometer, 20 kilometer, which may not be the best advice, but that is what is made available to him. Some things have changed. I'm not saying they've changed for the better, but some things have changed. One has nothing to do with agri-tech. We have to thank the government and the private sector for that, and that is the access to cheap data. India has the cheapest data in the world. That's something that we can be proud of. Geo has only made this more aggressively available, and everyone who's competing with Geo is now making it available too. What this means is that a combination of access to cheap data and and access to ways to consume that data, whether it's cheap smartphones, cheap tablets, whatever it is, has now made access available. But that's not enough. Again, I'm not claiming we have solved a problem. I'm just saying we have tried to address it. We invested in a company called Tractor Junction. All Tractor Junction, and in terms of hits, they're dealing with lakhs and lakhs of farmers because no one else is Googling tractors or looking up YouTube videos of tractors other than farmers. lakhs and lakhs of potential tractor buyers and sellers across the country are now using the Tractor Junction portal for the first time to access data on what is available to him, what is best for him, what is most appropriate for him, what are real prices that he should have access to, so on and so forth. Startups have not solved these problems. Startups are beginning to address these problems. Tackling information asymmetry is what we need, and that's all that we're getting behind. So thank you for that input, but we're definitely on the way to address some of these.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Prasad. I'm from Bangalore. I'm one of the startup advisors here actually. My question is, we have so many startups coming up. We end up gathering only in events like this, a global summit or any kind of such events happening across the globe, and NASCOM or CI, somebody arranging. But startups can be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, or 5 years old, and there are so many in the seeding stage at different stages of their life in the startup companies. My question is there any kind of platform that can be created for the startups where they can gather regularly and they can try to do in the corporate level, not in the government level? Government is a different segment. One government comes, one government goes, and there is a time of 5 years a lifespan. But whereas a corporate segment, can it be a corporate, in that platform, can it be a kind of gate for most of the startups where they can gather and they can discuss and they can be much more helpful if that is being done? Over to the panel, if somebody can give a reply on this.
Sure. So yes, I agree to you. There's still that issue that startups are working in silos. But we have to see the journey of the sector, it's still maturing. So we are trying to create that platform through our public-private partnerships. We are trying to create that platform through the working groups. What we try to do, and I don't have a definite answer to that, but what we try to do is to create platforms where we bring startups together on common themes, to discuss the areas where they want interventions, where they discuss the areas where they face challenges, and to discuss the areas where we can help or the larger community can help. For example, we're working on this public-private partnership framework, and one of the areas is access to finance. So all the Agritech finance startups, we're trying to bring them under this group to see if they can come and discuss what they are facing challenge and what are the 3 or 4 critical areas where they want government to intervene. Similarly, there's another group which is on access to advisories and inputs. There's another group on access to markets. The 3 or 4 key challenges that we have in agriculture sector. We did a consultation recently in Delhi, and it was really great that we had almost representation of 30 to 35 startups, of course not the universe, but we found real good inputs from them that we are taking further towards government and to a state government. So I think as forum, we are trying to create those platforms. And I think that's an idea that can be taken forward with industry itself, where we create subgroups on thematic areas where you all can come together and discuss the challenges that you face within your communities.
Hi, I have a question. One is to the panel in general and one specific to SIDBI. What is a gestation period you could say, if you could say, about agritech companies to finally make profitable? Meaning you just said they are not yet profitable. So will they be profitable in a particular period of time, or visualize that? Is my first question. Second question is to SIDBI. That is SIDBI, what exactly is the SIDBI's role in the entire startup ecosystem? Meaning, are you like NABARD, or are you like banks, or are you like VC?
In terms of agri, certainly profits are possible. I mean, we are one of those companies which are profitable and agri and big in size. So certainly profits are possible. Unlike a lot of the consumer elements, right, where branding etc. happens, the margin profile here will always remain low. I mean, if you look at the entire agri value chain, right from let's say the seed and agrochemical till the commodity, the only area where the gross margins are a little higher are in the area of agrochemicals. Everywhere else, if you see, every player makes something in single digit only, right? So here the obviously reaching a certain scale, working towards a mindset that you are here to do things efficiently, not get revenue for the sake of revenue. Some of those thought processes ensure that money is possible. See, this whole sector of agri is dominated by a lot of traditional players, right? None of these traditional players can survive if they don't make profit. So first of all, profit is possible in agriculture. It's just that it's not very easy. So that's the thing. So many of the startups, I'm sure, are on the way to doing it. The problems are many, and many of them are only few years old, right? So we will have to give them time. But profit, in my mind, is very much profitable. We are one example, honestly. And moving on to the second question.
Sure. Thank you for that question. It's a very interesting question. So SIDBI, first of all, is not like NABARD. Okay. SIDBI is a financial institution set up for financing, facilitating and promoting the SMEs in India. So we are the DFI for the SME sector in India, and therefore our focus or whatever we do has to revolve around the SMEs. Having said that, coming to the role of SIDBI in the startup ecosystem, as I had mentioned in my address, that we were one of the very early financiers of the startups in India. Before even the funding, the venture capital funding had really taken off, SIDBI had got into the funding these startups under a risk capital scheme, right? But going forward, we have expanded that role beyond providing funding to the startups directly. As I mentioned, we also manage the fund of funds for startup of the DPIIT, which is 10,000 crore fund, where we do not invest directly in the startups, but we route the investments through the alternate investment funds, like Omnivore sitting here. They have been their second fund. I think fund 2 has been, first and second have been funded under the fund of funds for startup. So that is one way of channeling funding to the startup ecosystem. The other one is that, as I mentioned, we are also working with many of the incubation centers where we provide facilities for setting up the incubation center infrastructure, and also providing grant and returnable grant and equity to the startups. We also have a subsidiary called SVCL, SIDBI Venture Capital Limited, which again manages several funds which fund directly the startups in India. So there are multiple ways of associating with the startups. I also talked about the venture debt that we are providing to the startups now. It's a recent activity which we have started, which will focus specifically on only venture debt and not venture capital. So there is a gamut of activities that SIDBI is involved in the startup ecosystem. Besides being directly involved with the startups, as I mentioned just now, we are also in the business of creating an enabling environment in the startup ecosystem. Have quite a few ecosystem projects. I talked about the equity platform that we are creating. We are also in the process of a formalization project, which is not very specifically linked to the startups, but to the micro enterprises and the small enterprises. We are working with the Ministry of MSME to ensure that as many SMEs as possible today are onboarded onto the Udyam platform. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Udyam registration. It is a unique registration number given by the Government of India to all the SMEs, and increasingly for availing any benefit or any scheme that is made available by the Government of India for the SMEs, you have to necessarily have that Udyam registration number. Now, many of the commercial banks are complaining because they do finance these medium and small enterprises, but in the absence of the Udyam registration number, they are not able to classify that lending under the priority sector, and therefore now they are not able to meet the priority sector targets that they have. So this is a massive exercise that we are undertaking. After a lot of follow-up, we have been able to get the sign-off from the Minister of MSME in onboarding all these micro enterprises onto the Udyam registration number to bring them onto the formal financing channel through the registration of the Udyam. So we will be using our linkages with the various banks, financial institutions, the NBFCs, MFIs, and our associate companies like NCGTC or CGTMSC, who have a huge database of these MSMEs, who can then get onboarded onto the Udyam platform and get the formal registration number. So there are multiple ecosystem projects also that we are doing, which will not have any tangible benefit to SIDBI per se as an institution, but it is a contribution to the Indian economy that we are looking at.
I think with this, I would like to wrap up and thank the audience.
One last question, if you can.
Okay.
Over here. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm Vanya. I'm one of the co-founders of a startup called Frizzle Weather, which is a hyperlocal weather intelligence platform that uses the trivergence of AI, ML, and IoT in order to empower businesses and individuals with hyperlocal weather forecasts that you can give up to 6 months in advance with a resolution of 300 meters. So we're currently have 15 weather stations which we ourselves have deployed across Bangalore and have currently conducted various pilots and trials with large name companies in the agri space. So we are currently in the process of expanding our weather station network across Bangalore and soon across India. So I wanted to know what is I would say the market appetite for investing in sort of a data and collection infrastructure which will improve the quality and of actual data and therefore data analytics in the future.
Certainly the need for it is there, and do connect with me post this session in terms of whether the appetite is there to invest. I think.
So I'll just be honest with you. It'll come down to how good your tech is. Merely being able to do real-time weather monitoring is used from an agri perspective is useful basically for ground truthing of insurance claims and very little else. If you're able to predict, let's say, a week in advance accurately, and if you're doing that using an automated a micro weather monitoring station, even if you're doing it on field, that's great because you can use it for prediction of rain, and then with rain you can do disease, fungus, pesticide, any number of things can be linked to that backwards. But if you're doing long-term weather forecasts, and that is what you say your USP is, and you're able to prove it, of course there's appetite for it. India has, there is a large private player, which I'm a large shareholder in, and then there's IMD, and then there's little else. So if you've got something attractive in the space, and you've got data to back your claims, I think there's incredible appetite for it. After you speak to him, you can speak to me.
So thank you to dear panelists and the moderator, Mr. Rahul, and thank you to ITC for sponsoring this session. And now I would like to invite Mr. Ashok Mida, who is a charter member at TIE Bengaluru, and he is also part of the TIE Agri Special Interest Group at TIE Bengaluru. Mr. Ashok, please.
Thank you and good afternoon. We're just breaking for food, and it's so interesting to know what's behind the screen with the food, the kind of domain of agri, and such a wonderful panel we had. We had a development banker, we had a venture capital, we had a corporate, we had a startup, and a global perspective from World Economic Forum. I think agri domain is the only domain which can cover these aspects in one forum. Like take any other domain, it may not happen. I'll just take 2 minutes of your time. See what's happening in the kind of dialogue we had. Taking a word from the panelists itself, is it not a very maturing ecosystem, having the kind of transformation from the disruptions we have? And it's not the same domain which we saw maybe 3 or 5 years back. It accommodates every kind of activities or transformation. Like if you think of the ecosystem, it is attracting a huge investments happening. Like I was looking at the Asia Pacific, where the 20 to 21, it tripled the investments happening, and India is a part of it. And coming back to 2022, 21 and 22, the first half year has actually taken 2 times of it. Science China, India gives the highest investment bracket coming in. And that's what I could see in a couple of discussions emerging here. There were a good lot of questions happening from the audience, like how the farmer takes the benefit and accesses it here. yes, it's the productivity aspects are sometimes being ignored by the startups which go into the, like if you take the value chain, it's down upstream, then production and the downstream happening. The upstream still lingers with the investment attraction, but this panel was more on the production aspect and upstream, where Omnivore was speaking about the dairy, Sandeep was speaking about the soil science, where the production happens to happen. Now, once the productivity aspects are taken care and equitability happens, it's possible that the sustainability emerges out of the commercialization. This is what the farmer takes the delivery of these offerings and then take it to the, the production aspects, and the value chain becomes sustainable, and innovation happens in each part of the value chain, and this is what Agritech offers. Now, that's an appeal I make to the farming community and also startups to come into Karnataka. And Karnataka offers something like a variety of agri-climatic zones. Like we have 10 zones. You have the coastal side, you have the rainfall heavy areas, we have the transition zones, we have the desert agroclimatic zones, and it offers everything for a startup to think of and start building up the, kind of offerings to them. And it's, the problem statements have to be taken from the ground and given to these personalities to come in and start doing. And the trigger has to come from the farming community, trigger has to come from the production. Now what's happening in Karnataka, I just want to make out, the Venturize is one of the offerings given as a challenge to the startups. Go to the production centers, go to the value chain stakeholder players and bring the kind of problem statements where you can give solutions. And that's where, like yesterday you should have been there. Out of the 10 selected startups, 3 were related to the agri. And this is going to expand. That's where I see the maturing ecosystem is coming, and we have to be aggressively a part of that. Before I put down my few words, I just want to say about TIE Bangalore. And we have a special interest group which covers the startups, which covers the mentoring aspects, and which networks with the gentlemen which we have in the panel. Like with a short notice of 1 week, we could get the strata and the kind of the paraphernalia who has contributed, who has been anxious to contribute to the Agritech. And TIE Bangalore has a special interest group. In fact, in May, we had a huge event where we had the World Bank representative coming in. And even the global perspective says that data-driven agriculture is the main focus globally, and India plays an important role in this. And the other aspect which rules the entire transformation is the fintech. And fintech here you can see, it's not just the lending, it's not just the VC. What's happening for agri is the blended finance. Like you have the equity coming from the venture capital besides the entrepreneur itself, and then it has the blend of the CSR because impact funding happens here. And this is one of the focus areas which attracts the highest impact funding mechanism, and then follows the CSR funding. And last but not the least is the debt, which development banker like SIDBI is here. And there is NABARD Ventures, NAB Ventures and NABARD coming in. And TIE Bangalore is connected with all these enterprises, setups. And we also have the connects with the farmer producing companies. Like if Karnataka boasts of 300 FPOs, most of them are connected to us. So we try to marry these offerings from different levels of the stakeholders to the farming community. So please do be connected with us. We have the mentors, we have the tech connects, we have the agri domain expertise coming in. And with these few words, I just want to thank you, each of you who responded so well in a matter of a week and coming into this. And maybe in the second or third week of this month, we have the Elevate being done by the ITBT. This is the 7th year of Elevate happening, which has already put down 50 crores of funds to the Agritech phenomenon. So all of you are again welcome, and all the participants here coming into the Karnataka state to have the stakeholding, pleasure of coming and operating in Karnataka. So I have the pleasure of complimenting the personalities, distinguished panelists who have come in here, and they have all traveled from different places. Gentlemen from Delhi, from Mumbai, and we have Chennai and Hyderabad coming together, and all of them are trying to converge here, and the convergence is the offering of the TIE Bangalore